Physics Bites,
a science podcast in English by the students of Notre Dame d'Ascension.
Hello again, and welcome to a new episode of Physics Bites, our English language physics podcast of the students of Notre Dame d'Ascension here in Paris. We have our last interview of the year with our senior students. We have two new students who are going to talk to us about artificial intelligence. They had a pretty cool presentation, all dressed up, really well done, and they're going to talk to us about what is artificial intelligence and all the hoopla around it that we have currently. So, do you guys want to present yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Louane.
So we have Louane, who last year was also in the class. What did you do last year? Do you remember?
I did a presentation on Johannes Kepler.
Right, Johannes Kepler. And we have the second students.
Hello, I'm Pierre.
We have Pierre. And last year you were working on
Einstein.
That's right. And this year you guys were teamed up together to work on artificial intelligence. Very good. All right, so let's begin as usual. You guys maybe give a short summary of what you talked about, go into a bit of details, and then we have a ton of questions from your classmates, myself, and I'm sure you guys have questions for yourselves. All right, so let's get started. Who wants to start?
First, I started to talk about the history of AI, and actually the founder of artificial intelligence is Alan Turing in the 50s. And is basically known for having developed what we call today the Turing tests, which mean that essentially if a human tester could no longer tell the difference between human and computer interaction, then the computer will pass the Turing test, and we could say that the computer possesses human intelligence level.
Or at least some sort of intelligence, right? Yes. So the idea being that if a human can't distinguish between the responses of a computer and a human, then that computer is considered somewhat intelligent. Even though I guess today the criteria of the Turing test has become more sophisticated than that, but that's at least the start of it. And can you tell us maybe a little bit what Turing actually worked on? Because he was before the age of computers, but he was working more on the theory behind it, I guess the mathematics of it and all that, right? Did you guys do any research on Turing himself?
Not really, but I know that he worked on Enigma.
Right, he was one of the main intellectual forces behind cracking the German code of Enigma, and I think we have a bunch of students, including Pierre, who are going to be doing a little presentation on that and working on it in a couple of days, right?
Yeah, it's not actually us, but it's in the class.
Right, we have a researcher from in cryptography that's going to talk to us about. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic here. Pierre, so what else did you guys talk about in your presentation?
We talked about basically the concept of artificial intelligence, which is the concept of the development of computer systems able to perform tasks usually requiring human intelligence. So basically, when you get visual perceptions, that's something that usually humans can do. But we also talked about different some subsets of artificial intelligence, including machine learning and deep learning.
Right. So we make the distinction between artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, because they are related but not the same thing, right? So what is the relation between what we call artificial intelligence and what we call machine or deep learning? What is the link between those two?
Basically, I said that some machines are able to learn from themselves, and this is called machine learning. More precisely, machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence, which is broadly defined as the capability of a machine to imitate human intelligence behavior by making systems that learn and improve by themselves. And deep learning is a subfield of machine learning.
The deep learning is a subfield actually of machine learning, and it goes deeper into the subject of learning from itself. First of all,
I'll stop you there just so we can be clear on this. So a machine can be intelligent without being capable of actually improving itself.
the notion of intelligence is actually a broad subject,
right? And it's one of the central questions of artificial intelligence. What does it mean to be intelligent, right?
Yeah, right.
Did you guys find any answer to this? Because I think there's many answers, and no answer is universally accepted necessarily, I guess.
I mean, the question of logic here, what artificial intelligence excel at is logic. When you give it a command, it doesn't ask if it's morally right or if or it just does it when you give it a command to do.
Right. So it's restricted to what is logically possible, and it can't go outside of. And what form of logic? Because we can have, mathematical logic or logic in the philosophical sense.
Yeah, it's mathematical logic. I mean, it just does what we tell them to do. It's like,
okay.
Yeah.
So we can come back to it later. But the question of intelligence, I think one of the questions is a computer, or let's call it an algorithm or a network or any machine, is it intelligent in the same way that we're intelligent, or is it intelligent in a different way? Is there a universal notion of intelligence? Are there different forms of intelligence? Maybe we can come back to that a bit later. I think, Louane, you were going to say something.
I will say that I think that a computer is not intelligent at all, because he only does one thing, and that is solve equation.
Right. It's in the heart of what's going on in that black box that we call the machine. What it's doing is doing mathematical operations. So in a sense, it's restricted to the laws of mathematical operations. That's what you mean by being only a logical machine.
Yeah, exactly. And we can take even the example of ChatGPT, for example, as it is trending. It was trending a few months ago. So now OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, actually created a website, I forgot the name, but it can actually check if a text is the AI generated or not.
Right. And there have been many who've actually come up with
but
sites
this one
to test that. Yeah.
Specifically, it's really strong. I mean,
okay.
What we can take away from that is that there's a huge difference between a human written text and AI written text, and it's kind of impressive that we can differentiate between these two.
Okay, so let's come back to this central question of artificial intelligence. Do you guys want to give a little history of it? So after Turing, when we actually started building machines which were able to, I don't know, maybe show signs of intelligence or do intelligent things.
Yes. The first chatbot was developed in 1965, and this
very early on. So this is when we
yes.
didn't have personal computers yet. This is only the first generation of computers which were being used, which were these giant machines. Okay, so the first chatbot dates back to the 1960s.
And
I didn't know that.
It was able to carry on a conversation in English on any topic. So it's very impressive.
What was it called? Do you know?
Eliza.
Okay. And who built it?
I'm not sure.
I guess it was in the US?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Americans were very much in the lead on this in the 1950s and 60s. Okay, so the first chatbot dates the 1960s. How did it pass the Turing test? Was it able to pass the Turing test?
I think so, but the first time in history that a machine defeated a human being is in 1997, when the world chess champion Garry Kasparov was defeated by
do you remember the name?
Deep Blue.
Deep Blue, that's right, Deep Blue.
Yeah, but there's a actually, it was really good, Deep Blue, but it wasn't at the level of Garry Kasparov, and many people know that as he undermined the power of how Deep Blue, of how good Deep Blue was. So he didn't play at his full potential, but it was still really, really good. That's the proof that even with the small advantage by thinking it was inferior than its actual level, he lost. So.
But can we call, for example, let's take this example because it made a lot of noise. You guys weren't born yet at the time, but I was, I guess, closer to your age when it was a huge bit of news. Can we consider Deep Blue as truly intelligent? Because in a sense, all that Deep Blue could do was one task, only play chess. It could do nothing else, right? So would it be considered as intelligent? And furthermore, we know how a chess computer works. It's basically something that can do what humans do in terms of projecting different kinds of strategies and movements, but it can do millions of it in a fraction of a second. So what we might think about, the different strategies to plan ahead, it could do faster, easier. But that's all it can do. So can we consider that as an intelligent machine in that sense?
Yeah, there's also a concept. There's people talk. It was a quote. The intelligence is defined by the ability to adapt to change. I don't really remember the full quote, but if we take intelligence as this sense, a machine is far from being intelligent.
Or at least Deep Blue is completely unintelligent. Okay. Which again brings us back to this central question of what does it mean to be intelligent, right? We're going to come back to that. I promise. So go on. Let's go back to the history. So 1997, Kasparov is defeated by Deep Blue. The first time humans are defeated by a machine in chess. What are the next milestones in the evolution of artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, all these things?
I think it was in 2012 when two scientists trained a large neural network to recognize images of cats, despite giving no background information, by showing it 10 million available images from YouTube. And this date could be at the beginning of the new era for the deep learning.
Right, because this was, I guess, the first case also of something of this magnitude based on machine learning, right? It wasn't programmed to recognize cats, it was taught. So it was trained to start recognizing cats using neural networks and all these things. Okay. And then from 2012 on, there's been like one milestone after another. Image recognition has become really good. Text recognition has become really, really good.
Even like Siri or
right. The voice assistants were invented very soon after that. Yeah. Right. And then the recent few years and months, we've had everything from DALL-E to ChatGPT to Midjourney and a ton of stuff that's coming up on the web now. You can create music, you can create text, you can create images, you can play different games. I think it was last week in biophysics, the topic of protein folding. You had a couple of your classmates talking to us about how an algorithm was trained to solve this problem of protein folding. AlphaGo, right? Which is. Do you want to talk to? I think you guys mentioned AlphaGo also.
We mentioned it very briefly. It's a Google subsidiary that created. It was created by DeepMind,
right?
And defeated the champion in 5 encounters. And even though there's a lot of possible moves in AlphaGo, it's something that usually it's a complex thing for computers to understand.
Right, the game of Go, because it's so much simpler, there's so many less rules than something like chess, it's also much more complex in the number of ways you can actually win, which is one of the reasons defeating a human in Go was much, much more difficult than defeating somebody in chess. Okay. All right, so I guess we've made the rounds. Let's talk a little bit about so this subset of machine learning and deep learning. Do you guys want to maybe give us an idea of what we mean by that? Why it's so revolutionary, I guess, in some sense? Because Pierre, you had a pretty interesting presentation when you were talking about just how it works, a little neural network and all these things. So I know it's difficult without diagrams and stuff, but I'm sure you guys can figure out a way.
Yeah, I talked about the deep learning more precisely and the neural networks in deep learning. So basically, what a neural network is, it's you have to imagine it as multiple layers, and each layer filtrating what you want from what the data tells you to what the data tells you.
So let's come back to basics. Different layers of what?
It's these different layers of inputs. So it's like the first layer.
So in each layer there are what we call nodes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what do these nodes do? And this comes back to the name, which is called neural networks, because they kind of resemble how neurons work. So what does each node do?
It has information of on the. For example, if you take an image of a cat, it has information on a pixel. Example, its color or its form or its.
It's even more simple than that, right? Because basically, what these nodes do is either when they receive an input, they put out an input, or they don't, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically, it's like a neuron in the sense that either it's going to fire a signal or it's not going to fire a signal. And then you said you have layers, and in these layers we have maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe 1,000,000 nodes. And then you have different layers coming one after the other, and the input from one layer, the output, from one layer becomes the input for the second layer, and the output from the second becomes this. And so what are we talking? That's the network part of the neural. What are we talking about when we talk about, my neural network has learned to recognize cats or characters or numbers? What are we meaning when we're saying that, and how do we teach it to do this?
Yeah,
I know it's a difficult question. It's complex, but I'm sure you guys can figure out a way.
So every picture has its own part. So if you take images of cats, they all have the same form. They all have the same structure. Their eyes are a bit different from the ones of the dogs or the humans, and etc. So we can teach computer to recognize the difference between. So, for example, if you give it it increases the probability of an image being the one of a cat and not the one of a human.
Right, and this is what we call like using a training set.
Yeah.
Right, so you tell it to recognize something, and then you say, good job, bad job. You recognize correctly, you didn't recognize. So you need to have a whole bunch of images of cats and dogs, and then you give it random tests, and then you tell it, no, that's a cat, that's wrong. And when we tell it, yes, that's a cat, that reinforces some connections, and we say, no, that's wrong, then it's going to kind of diminish the value of those connections because they're not really correct.
And this is called reinforcement learning.
Right, reinforcement learning. That's exactly what it is. Is it kind of how humans learn, or no? Do we know?
I think it's a part of how humans are educated. When the system of school, for example, when you do an exam, you have wrong. You'll understand that the link that you made to give this result was wrong. So you have to rethink of how you make the connection between the input, the question, and the result.
And I think as time gone on, we are debating whether that's actually how the human brain works as well, right? The brain is composed of millions and millions of neurons, and they're connected between them. And neurons, each of them is not intelligent. They sort of send or don't send signals, but the way they're connected is what we call learning, memories, thinking, cognition, and all these things, right? Okay. What is the difference between machine learning and deep learning? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference.
Louane, maybe?
Yes. I will say that the difference is, deep learning is a subfield of machine learning, but
it's a specific kind of machine learning. Okay.
But I don't know to explain it, but.
Do you want to give it a shot, Pierre? And then we'll come back to Louane?
I think it's most precise. It kind of...
It has better results, I think, in general, is what you mean.
It has better results as it is more complex. So what deep learning is, it focuses more on neural networks with multiple layers. So, for example, a machine, when with something with 1,000,000 layers, we'll say it's more deep learning. So we'll say it's a program based on deep learning more than one based on machine learning because of its complexity.
So in a way, it's a question of sophistication. Like if a machine learning algorithm is very sophisticated, then we just call it deep learning. So there's no specific distinction between the two in a way.
Even the training size, for example.
The size of the samples.
So a machine learning, we can give it a few... when you say a few in computer terms, it's like thousands of inputs, and for a deep learning codes, we will have to give it millions and millions. For example, ChatGPT, billions of articles for it to understand deeply.
Right, and the actual parameters inside the network are numbered in the hundreds of millions, the billions.
Yeah.
So more layers, more elements, more complexity, deeper the learning, I guess, in some ways.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Do you guys want to add anything else in your summary, or do you want to move on to the questions?
Yes.
We'll move on to your question.
So let me ask you guys a question, first of all. Do you guys have an opinion yourselves on what it means, the word intelligence, for something to be intelligent? Because we talk about, human intelligence. We agree that, some might say that children are intelligent. Others might say, no, children are not intelligent, but they're learning very quickly. Somebody would say who's good in math is intelligent, but somebody who's good at, basketball or football is not that intelligent. Others might disagree. Some might say, dogs are intelligent, but cats are less intelligent. What do we mean by intelligence? What do you guys think about the word intelligence? What does that imply? What does that contain?
I think there are
easy questions. We'll start with the easy questions, huh?
Yeah, but so I never liked the word intelligence because it's such a broad term. I mean, it's like saying machines for something for PS4 and a computer and
a sewing machine.
Even so, it's such a broad thing that we can't define it.
If it can mean anything, it doesn't mean.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, I think, for example, you said someone that goes math is logical. Someone that's good at basketball is athletic. So either there's a form of intelligence, athletic intelligence, or there's even, intelligence.
Like emotional intelligence, we talk about logical intelligence, physical intelligence. Okay. So for you, the word intelligence, you would not be able to give a definition of your own, you think?
It's not true. But to take the example of ChatGPT, we know that it can only answer a question about what happened after 2021, for example, because it don't have enough recent data, so it's impossible.
So before 2021?
Yes.
Right.
Before.
Okay.
And so it's possible to say that artificial intelligence can't constantly replace human workers. So,
but in a way, I can say the same thing. If I ask you a question about stuff that you haven't studied yet,
yes,
you would have difficulty being intelligent about it, right?
But we have conscience, and we have the possibility to try to
learn.
Yes, try to learn.
So deep learning, superficial learning.
The main difference about the concept that we can't say something about or what we did not study is that even if we did not study it, we can comprehend it in a matter of seconds. But for a computer, you have to implement it. You have to force it into.
Well, in that case, can we not say, for example, when Deep Blue is playing Kasparov and Kasparov makes a move, the intelligence has to understand what this new move was, what it means, how it changes the environment, and has to react to it, because he would not react in the same way if he had done another move, right? So in a way, that's what you're describing, no?
Yeah, exactly. And the human understands the move, whereas a robot just does the best move possible without.
How can you be so sure that what we do in our intelligence is not also a sort of reflex that's built in and developed? Maybe our intelligence is very similar, just even deeper.
Yeah,
even more sophisticated.
For example, right now we don't have any knowledge from that, but we've never even studied it about the thing that human intelligence is what robots do, just deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But I can, for example, respond by the fact that so if even if we don't do a move.
See, right now you're adapting to a new environment.
if we don't do a move, if we do, for example, a bad move, we'll do a bad move, probably if it's a new situation that we've never encountered.
Right.
But then we'll learn from it. We'll do a better move, then a better move, then a better move. But we can still do the worst move if we see, if for example, it was the same situation with a small difference, but the small difference we can see that if it's a second better, we can trap the opponent. I don't see it.
Right. So you're talking about, for example, thinking so far ahead that you give an illusion of something and then you do other things because
exactly.
But can we not agree that everybody here has met people saying, "Oh, that guy is really smart," or "That guy is really dumb"? We can all agree that there are people we universally agree upon as very intelligent, and other people who are just not very intelligent.
I think it's probably because they excel at one thing, like you said, the robot, for example, they excel at chess, but they are also good at other things. They can maintain conversation, they can adapt change, and it's multiple factors. It's not just the fact that they excel at one
Which
thing.
then brings us to the question of what we call in this field artificial general intelligence, as opposed to just the term AI, artificial intelligence. Do you guys know, do you want to talk a little bit about what we mean by artificial general intelligence as opposed to, for example, no? You guys haven't encountered the word?
We never encountered the word.
So when we talk about artificial general intelligence, we mean something, a machine that's basically what you're describing, like a human, in that humans can react to just an almost infinite number of situations, right? It could be a physical thing, it could be a mental thing, it could be a calculational thing, it could be an emotional thing. So they're intelligent, they're able, if we count on the word intelligent as a sort of measure of adaptability to new conditions, we're intelligent in a general way. Machines thus far are very specifically intelligent, right? And so the idea, for example, with ChatGPT, because that's the in vogue, right, example, is that it's really good in linguistic intelligence, but if you ask it to do calculations, I remember the first versions of it, you would do 2 + 2 = 4, and you tell it, no, it's equal to 5, and it'd be like, okay, no, 2 + 2 = 5, right?
Yeah,
so it's not a general form of intelligence. It can't do math and read and write and describe like an image and all these things, right?
Yeah, even if we don't say no, 2 + 2 = 5, he'll maybe answer 5.
Right.
I remember I asked him to calculate a small, not really difficult equation, it was a multiplication or something. He gave me 4 different answers 4 different times.
Right.
That was kind of
and there were a bunch of tests you could do with it where you could see that it's not very intelligent in that it couldn't make the link between what it said previously to what it said currently. And one of the main critiques, I guess, of ChatGPT and these language models is that they give the illusion of intelligence, but they're not intelligent because they don't actually understand what they're saying. They're just statistically giving the most likely answer, right?
Exactly.
So do you want to maybe talk to us about how ChatGPT actually works, and then using that you can maybe answer the question?
So ChatGPT is...
Or any language model, right? Any what we call LLMs, right?
So because ChatGPT is more trending, I'll talk about ChatGPT. So it was based on GPT, that's what OpenAI made, generative...
Google, I think, before OpenAI, right?
Yeah, even before Google. Yeah, but there was the first the latest GPT that they based ChatGPT by is the one that OpenAI.
Right. It's building on their own previous versions.
Exactly.
Right.
GPT, what it stands for is Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So pre-trained in it, the ChatGPT is, we gave it loads and loads of information. So the project of ChatGPT was first debuted in the 2015 or something like that. And it took
in the second half of the 2010s, that's for sure.
Yeah. So it took 6-7 years for it to just 7 years of training. Imagine you give it for millions and billions and billions of
pieces of text,
articles, exactly, and it understands after each word logically, statistically, which word would next be. For example, after banana, there's always honey. So they'll always say after banana, honey.
I don't know what articles you've been reading.
Yeah, but that was just kind of an example.
So it was sort of building up a statistical database of what words follow what words. And furthermore, not just what word follows what word, but what word follows what word, given the word before and the word before and the word before.
And given the context, because the context, for example, if you ask it a question, for example, is banana radioactive? It won't give you banana honey. It won't give you banana
potassium.
But something like that. So, and later they fine-tuned it. So ChatGPT can, for a moment, they were kind of offensive. There was some polemic about the fact that it gave information wrong, not wrong, but rules that
there's some sort of like
malice
racism
and something, racism and a lot of things
negative.
like that. So they fine-tuned it even more.
And what is that? What is the cause of something like that? Like that's one of the limitations of these learning models is that they're limited to.
Because he doesn't understand what it means.
And they're limited to the kind of training set you give it. So if you give it a training set and most of the internet is in English and there's lots of, for example, like the opinions on the internet are not proportional to the opinions of the general public.
Yeah,
maybe.
They also made the robot based on Twitter. So they took all the information on Twitters and
which is
the
not
robot,
representative of human society.
And the robot actually was super racist and sexist, and he just
vulgar.
He wasn't really. So it was kind of funny.
Right, so that's one of the limitations is that you're limited to the kind of data set you have. I think there was the problem with that also with image detection and image creation because most of the pictures on the internet are white, like European, North American types. So because it has more data on it, it detects them much more easily than it does, for example, people whose skin is a different color or of different, physical shape, etc. Okay. Did you want to add anything more to the question of ChatGPT? We started talking about the question of the meaning. How is it possible for something like this to actually understand what it's saying? Because you were saying that so it constructs sentences based on statistical probabilities. What is it to say that maybe when we talk, when you ask a question and I answer, or we read a text, what do we mean by understanding the meaning of that? Is there a way of actually quantifying that?
So we actually defined what a sentence means. So each word that I talk, we defined what that words meant, and we know that. But for a robot, it's just binary. It's just 11011. Mm-hmm. So that's what we can make the key difference between a human and a robot by the deeper understanding. So. We know that, for example, the word is means that something is.
That's not a very good definition. Usually is to define is.
That's
literally the most difficult example I think that you could have taken on existence, right? Being.
But for example, banana. We know what a banana is. We know it's yellow.
I know why you keep bringing up banana. It's lunchtime. We're all hungry here. So it's coming up. Let me ask you another question. This is one of the more, I guess, call it science fiction-y type of questions. There's this fear that AI will end humanity, that it will become smarter than us, that will be lead to our extinction, to our demise. How realistic is that? Is that a real question we can ask? Is that something that is something that we can actually even try and answer? And then maybe from there we can go on to something more concrete, like, okay, if you guys want, you can talk about the effect of AI on human society, because even if it might not dominate us one day, it's going to have its effects on us, right? We see it already in school. We see it already in the economy in terms of job. So are we going to be destroyed by intelligent robots, super intelligent robots?
Yeah, I think you talk about it in our presentation.
Yeah, I talked about that. So basically, there's actually an MIT study that talks about the polemic about if AI would take over humanity, etc., etc. And it's really... It's not really probable, as it is humans that codes robots, and it's like 50 pages. It's like a 50-page study. You can search it on the internet. It talks about that. Yeah, maybe in a few hundred years, it's possible if we still exist, etc., etc., etc. There's just so many conditions for it to take over humanity that it makes it not probable. For it to have an impact on humanity, I think it already has a big impact. For example, if most of you are listening it from your phones, so some impact is positive. For example, we have the whole knowledge of the whole world in our pockets all day. Mm-hmm. But some of it is negative, as we are dependent from this phone, from our phone.
So every sort of new power we gain with technology also kind of makes us dependent on that technology, right?
Exactly.
So neither of you guys are too worried about humans being enslaved by intelligent robots.
If you are going to be enslaved, there's nothing we can change about that.
Yes.
Oh, so you don't even believe in free will then, in that case, right? Is that it? So the problem goes deeper into that. But realistically, can AI intelligence surpass human intelligence, do you think?
Surpass it. I think it already has surpassed it
in some
specific
domains,
domains.
in very specifics, right?
In specific domains. So if we can, so realistically, 100 years ago, we didn't think it would actually be possible. So we still don't know anything. We don't really know. We don't have a good amount of knowledge on artificial intelligence to say if it can surpass, if it can understand things, or etc. So for the moment, it's a big question mark. But realistically, it will surpass humans, but it won't take over.
Okay. So we're making that distinction. Okay, we don't have a lot of time. I think the bell is going to ring very quickly. So let me ask you one final question. I think which is something which I find interesting as a question is. So we have, for example, this polemic, as you say, of these intelligent algorithms that are able to create images, right? You write a text and it produces fantastic images, right? And there's a lot of noise around this and the question of, okay, what does it mean to create? What does it mean to, and we can apply it to the same thing, right? When we have ChatGPT, we ask it to write a short story about a banana, if you want to talk about that, I'm sure it can do it, or write a poem about something. This begs a very philosophical question of what does it mean to create, right? What is the difference between a human that paints something and an algorithm that does the same thing? And, for example, I'm using these software to produce the little images for each episode, right? Because it's pretty easy to use. It's pretty fantastic. Let's not even talk about the climate side of things, which is terrible. But what do you think about the effect of this whole? Is it the same form of creation as human creation? Do we need to compare to human? I mean, maybe it's a very human-centric question to ask about this, but what is your general opinion about, creativity that's coming from these intelligent algorithms? Is that a threat to humans? Does that mean that, human creativity is now going down the drain, that we don't need to do anything, or is it different?
First, we could say that human created AI, so
right.
maybe, yes, I think it's not where the question is not the same, because it based on calculation equation, and actually, I think that when we create something, it's not like that. It's not.
But we don't know how we create things, right? That's part of the problem. Is our science of human cognition isn't advanced enough yet to really know that.
Exactly, we don't know how we create that. The robot, it's coded to create something, so it's something. So, like art, for example, it's something that inspires us. A robot isn't truly programmed to inspire us because it doesn't know the concept of inspiring someone.
Yes.
Okay, so you two both are of the opinion that we make that distinction between something that's quintessentially human that can't be quantized with mathematics and zeros and ones and even deep networks, even if they are billions of nodes deep, right? Okay. All right. Well, any final comments before we end this final episode of our?
I'm good.
Fine. You're good,
Yes,
Louane?
it's good.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was a really, really interesting topic. It's very in vogue, as we say. It's something that's going to be with us more and more. And I thought you guys did a really good presentation. It was very, very informative. It was well structured. And I could go on asking you questions for a while, but I think we're going to stop there. So thank you very much, both of you.